Hi everyone, welcome in. And there was a quick break, so we'll let everyone get settled. Um, but we've got a lot of content from Dave. This is a session that he actually delivered at our last VMUG Connect in Minneapolis. So you guys will get a behind the scenes of what kind of content we had there. Um, Dave is a senior cloud engineer at Vizient, specializing in enterprise virtualization and cloud infrastructure. With over 15 years of experience managing VMware-based environments, he's played a key role in advancing Vizient's on-premises data center capabilities. He held multiple VMware certifications dating back to vSphere 5. Reflecting deep and longstanding platform expertise, his work focuses on architecting and optimizing virtualization solutions that support large-scale enterprise operations. He's passionate about helping organizations evolve their infrastructure strategy and adopt modern cloud technologies. I will also throw out that he's a VMUG Chicago leader, so we're happy to have Dave present on the community side today. Dave, I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Erica. Hello and welcome, everybody. So yeah, like Erica said, this is a session I did at the VMUG Connect up in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago, and they thought it kind of tied in with everything else going on today. So here we go. Like she said, she filled out most of my background for me already. I've been at my company for almost 19 years at this point. Been using VMware going back to the 4X days. All my socials, you can reach out to me if you want or connect. Happy to do that. I promise that QR code does go to LinkedIn. Some people are hesitant to scan QR codes, and at one point there might have been one that rickrolled you in this presentation, but I've taken that out. So just getting to it. So the backstory. Uh, so my company is a merger of multiple companies at this point. So a couple of years ago, we had several data centers. We had some in the Chicago area and also down in the Dallas area. Um, And because we are such a spread out company, our corporate is down in the Dallas area. We've got people in Chicago, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, Tennessee, just all over the place. So every year they try to bring in all of the infrastructure network guys into the Dallas area so we can all collaborate and just spend a couple days together instead of always sitting on Zoom calls or Teams calls. And then this is kind of what happened. So we're all kind of hanging out at the end of the day one night at the hotel. It just actually happened to be my birthday as well, so hanging out with some people. Um, and then decided, okay, it's getting late. Everybody starts heading back, walk by one of the other bars at the hotel, and I see my boss, my boss's boss, and my boss's boss's boss sitting in there. So I stop in just to say, hey, how's it going? I'm calling it a night, whatnot. And then after I walked into that bar, I ended up having to move a data center. Um, So not exactly the night I was expecting, but this led to a couple of good conversations and basically kicked off the next 7, 8 months of my life to plan out how we were going to shut down our Chicago data center and relocate everything down to the Dallas area. As I mentioned, we had the Chicago data center and a Dallas data center. This is just a little bit of an overview of what we had in there. So we were rocking almost 200 hosts between the two sites, multiple Pure Storage arrays. Both sites were running production workloads along with dev and test workloads. And then they kind of functioned as a little bit of a DR, but not true DR between the two sites. Um, what else do I have here? We've got, um, so between those two data centers, we had dual 10 gig pipes. So we had lots of bandwidth. One of those was just dedicated for backup replication, but that left us still with 10 gigs of bandwidth to move stuff from Chicago down to Dallas. Um, the main challenges we came across was IP addressing. In Chicago, it was a legacy data center from one of the previous companies that I came from, and we were using a 192.168 IP scheme up there. And down in Dallas, it was a 10.x IP scheme. So the first challenge was working out how to figure out how we can do both of those in one data center, which was successful. The next problem we came up with was compute. We definitely did not have enough compute down in Dallas, so we would have to plan out how to get the compute from Chicago to Dallas while not stressing our workloads or running out of compute while we were literally shipping hardware from Chicago to Dallas. Same thing with storage. A couple slides back, you saw we had 5 Pure Storage arrays in Chicago and we had 4 down in Dallas. So Thousands and thousands of vMotions later, we were able to rearrange things to free up space on a storage array, to then ship that storage array down to Dallas, set up replication, and start copying data back down there and prepping for the next set of moves. Another thing that definitely came up was power and cooling. Definitely ties back into what we've been talking about earlier. Thankfully, Cisco has a pretty good calculator on their website that you can use to figure out what your power draw is. Plus, we were able to go back and look at all of our reports from the data centers to see how much power we were pulling in our racks in Chicago so that we could make sure we had the same capacity down in the Dallas data center. Same thing with cooling, just to make sure that we aren't going to overload it or run out of power or run out of chassis or anything like that. The next step was licenses. At the time, we had 100 SRM licenses, and after all the planning and breaking down of figuring out how we're going to move machines, we realized we needed more. So initially, we had zero budget to do this, but thankfully, we were able to plead our case to the powers that be, and they bought us some more licenses for SRM that just made it a little better. The last challenge was time because we were basically told do this with as little downtime as possible. So that's part of why we spent 6 months of planning this out to basically down to the minute to figure everything out. We had 6 months to figure that out. What we came up with was a plan to do this over multiple nights. We'd start out with the lower environments like dev, move that one night. If everything checked out and was fine, we would then move on to test the week later. Um, Along with that, after test work, then we'd wait a couple weeks and do production. So we had the timing figured out. The next was figuring out how to move all the networks. That was the biggest challenge for our networking guys, because basically a lot of the planning came down to, hey, if we're going to move this network, it can't be living both in Elk and Dallas. So we need to group everything that lives on a network to make sure it moves at the same time. Thankfully, we always kind of ran where we had certain networks that were only dev, test, prod, so things didn't intermingle, which kind of simplified it a little bit and kind of dictated the schedule we'd be moving things. And then we also had to be aware of how much time it was going to take to ship stuff from Chicago down to Dallas. Thankfully, our data center was right by O'Hare, so getting FedEx freight to pick up and take down there, usually we could see stuff within 3 or 4 days. It would arrive down in Dallas, and then the guys down there would be able to go take it, rack it up, and get things plugged in and going again. And then also checking on the power and cooling again, making sure that we weren't going to overload any of our racks down in Dallas when we all of a sudden are slotting in a whole bunch of blades and more storage arrays, and just making sure we have things spread out and we're not overloading anything. And after doing that for about 6 months, everything came together. So then we moved on to, oh, but wait, the best part of this, after we had most everything planned out, our company ended up buying another company. So that threw a bit of a monkey wrench into our plans because now all of a sudden we've got to migrate them as well down to Dallas. And then we had to basically take our plan and look at it again and figure out when we can do this. And also, do we still have enough compute and storage and everything else down in Dallas to move this new company? Little info about the new company. We just had acquired them. They only had 50 VMs, so not a lot. And their total storage footprint was, I think, maybe around like 20 terabytes of space, so not a big deal to us. We had plenty of room, so that was good. Next part, they ran a UCS infrastructure just like us. So, all right, cool. We know what we're doing with that. That's going to make things easy. And they were on NetApp. Okay. We're a pure storage shop. They had NetApp, not a big deal. But because of all this planning and all the vMotions I had been doing previously to move stuff down there, we were able to take one of our storage arrays actually that we had emptied out and re-rack it into their area and basically move all their stuff off NetApp onto one of our pure storage arrays. The bad part, they were running Hyper-V. So thankfully, they had already been looking at doing a conversion project of converting all of their Hyper-V VMs over to VMware VMs. So that they just kind of ramped up and started running through a lot quicker. We didn't have to do too much with that. The IT team at that company took care of doing that. So it added a little bit of time to our overall timeline, but for the most part, it kind of just slid right in and we were good. Another nice thing is they were in the same data center, just a different computer room of where our Chicago data center was. So that made it easy to literally just pick up and carry equipment back and forth between the two data centers. So now it comes time to do the actual move. First thing we moved was dev. Um, Everything worked well. All of our planning went into play. We orchestrated everything with SRM, kicked it off, and in about an hour, we had everything moved on there. Um, with the whole SRM setup, we had used SRM just because we already had the licenses, and like I said before, we bought some more. But this way, yeah, sorry, we were able to leverage the pure storage replication with SRM to just make this smooth and easy. So dev worked great the first night. We were happy. We were done in an hour. Great. We did this on a Friday night. Everyone sat on a Teams call during the whole process. We watched it. We had our network guys, we had our infrastructure guys, and then Saturday morning we had, or actually no, we moved this on a Thursday night, sorry. And then Friday morning, the developers all checked out their VMs. Everything was working great. Cool. A week later, we had tests scheduled up to move, so we went through, did that again. That also took about an hour to move the night we did that. So we're two for two, no major problems. Everything's going great. So then that other company that we had purchased in the middle, we decided to, all right, we're going to slot them in here now because we've got things set up. We're good. So we start moving them. And then some bad stuff happened. Our whole process blew up in the middle. SRM stopped working, and just ran into a bunch of problems. So it turns out that DNS is a very important thing for SRM. The reason test and dev previously had worked so well, um, we used infoblox for our DNS. So we had infoblox clustering set up. So we had nodes in Elk Grove, we had nodes down in Dallas as well. So we never lost any DNS. With this new company, we were using the domain controllers for DNS, or they were using the domain controllers for DNS. So yeah, when your plan involves moving those domain controllers as the first machines to go, SRM gets really unhappy when half of it can no longer talk to itself because it can't figure out what things are because your DNS is down. Thankfully, we realized, hey, there's a couple more DNS servers we could point to that are in their Chicago office. So after some editing of the plans and some changing of config settings on different SRM appliances on that new company side, we were able to resolve it. We fixed it. It started working again. So that one took about 2.5 hours to work through and figure out exactly what we needed to do. But then by the time production came around, we did that a week later. Um, we were able to get that to move smoothly. There were no issues with that one as well, because once again, we were relying back on the Infoblox DNS and we were able to move all that down. Once we had all the production workloads, there were a few things we left in the data center on purpose that we were then just like infrastructure services that didn't directly affect things that were redundant. We were able to then migrate those later. The biggest lessons learned from this whole project was that DNS is very important with SRM. So if you are moving servers, you could skip the DNS route and do everything by IP address, but you're still going to need some sort of name resolution. So make sure you plan out to have DNS up and running while you are migrating stuff. Patience, patience, patience. I'm the type of person that likes to jump into stuff and rock through it and try to get it done pretty quick. So this was a very good lesson for me to just learn patience. We definitely took the slower approach to making sure we had everything planned out so we didn't run into massive problems or anything like that. Partnering with your teams. This was definitely a cross-functional, multi-team project. There was infrastructure guys, which I'm part of. We had our networking guys. We're also storage guys. So we're a very tight-knit team. Thankfully, we're not siloed like a lot of other companies are, but teamwork was key to this. Everybody had their role in talking it through with meetings and just kind of do a play-by-play is basically how we were able to succeed. Everybody knew what their plan was, what their part of it was. Everybody came together and we took care of it all and worked really well. And the biggest lesson I learned from this is don't go drinking with your boss anymore, or your big boss, or the boss's boss, because random fun projects like this tend to pop up then. And then I just found this lovely little haiku while I was putting this PowerPoint together talking about DNS. So, because it's not DNS, there's no way it's DNS, and it's always DNS. Thank you very much. And if you've got any questions or anything like that, please throw them into the Q&A. And I'll be back for the roundtable as well, and happy to answer any questions then.
We've got some time and we've got some
Oh,
questions for you, Dave, if you want.
all
Sorry
right.
to scare you. If
Sure,
you
yeah.
want, I'll cue it up. Was HCX evaluated for the migration?
Um, we did look into it, but we were originally told no budget. So it took a lot of begging and pleading to get the money just to buy the SRM licenses. So that immediately became not a viable option because they didn't want to spend money.
Could you give steps on connecting 192.x.x.x to 10.x.x network?
So the nice thing, we didn't have to do any IP address translation. The network guys, who I think are the greatest guys in my company because they're very helpful, they were able to actually change the gateways and change all the switch settings to basically move that. So our switches in our data center now run both 10.x IP schemes and have 192.168 IP schemes because we're still working on retiring some of those servers we moved, and after evaluating things, it was going to be more work to try to change IP addresses during this. So this is why they were able to figure out a great little hack to basically move the whole VLANs from one data center to the other and run everything down there.
We have another really good question, but I want to save it for the roundtable because I think Brad will have some really great follow-up questions for it. So, Brian, we will get to your question at the roundtable. We're not ignoring you. And then we had a question come through the chat. I'm not sure if that
Oh
you're
yeah,
able to see that,
the
but
DBAs. The DBAs were hesitant, as most DBAs are when you tell them, "Hey, I'm going to turn off your SQL servers and turn them back on." Um, So after much convincing, they got on board pretty quick, and they weren't super happy that we were going to make them jump on a Friday night to check out things and make sure everything's working. But we were able to kind of phrase it like the same thing that we have to do for patching, because every Microsoft server gets rebooted once a month for patching. So we were able to use a lot of the methodology we developed for that to put into this migration to make it act very similar to basically a extended reboot is how we started phrasing this to the company to make non-technical people and other people just more comfortable with it. The average downtime, um, it was about, I think like test and dev only were down for maybe 45 minutes total between pushing the big go button in SRM. Production took a little longer just because there was a larger amount of machines to move and we had more groups split up through SRM. Kind of if you're familiar with SRM, you can make your protection groups. So we orchestrated it to make sure that dependencies would go down and come up first if other servers were dependent on them. But the average time, I'd say, I think we had maybe at most during production an hour and a half of total downtime, which is within our window for maintenance that we use for patching as well.
we've got one more that came through. Um, for prod servers, was MS SQL always on clustering considered, or just safe cut, relocate, power up transition?
Um, some of our servers had the always on. We've had some struggles with that from time to time. So the DBAs thought it would be safer to just turn things off and then bring them back on. So we definitely deferred to them of how they wanted to handle it since we knew anything bad they'd have to fix. So they chose what they thought might be the easiest way to do it.
Well, great. We'll give it one more minute if folks have other questions to come in. And again, Brian, we'll get to your question during the AMA. I think that one connects on a lot of other things that our other speakers can talk on, whether it's power or stacking. So I'd love to get that one in front of the full group. Um, but if no one else has questions, I'll give you a couple minutes back, and then we'll send everyone to the lobby. If you're in the webcast, if you're watching from the lobby, this one will end, and then we'll start the next one up in about 17 minutes here. So you get a little bit of a break. It's lunchtime here in Nashville, but no matter where you are in the world, hope you get a little break and then we'll see you back. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for coming to my talk.